So you create the technology. It's great. It works fine in the lab. You bring it out into the real world, and then you spend 100 times more effort removing all the false positives.
Welcome to the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage Show, and I'm your host, Richard Wray. My mission is to help entrepreneurs understand AI and use it to their advantage. Join me today where we dig deep with our guest and get you the best concepts and strategies. Today's special guest is Jason Souloglou. Jason is a serial entrepreneur with a mission. He wants technology to serve humanity, not vice versa. He is a proud CEO of SeaChange, a visual AI platform that detects real-time scenarios for quick resolution in the physical world. Today, we're talking about the AI advantage for retailers. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.
It's really great to have you here, Jason. And as I ask all my guests, where in the world are you?
We are in Manchester.
I do know that extremely well. My part of the world, give or take a few, about 63 miles. Right, but let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background, and tell us about SeaChange.
So I started as a techie. I went to Manchester University, did a PhD, and from there founded a company that sold software to Apple.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out to be Apple's Rosetta.
Very nice.
Got bought by IBM. Then set up an ARM office, and from there incubated SeaChange within ARM, and then spun it out. So it's been a bit of a journey getting to this point with SeaChange.
Well, that sounds like some really big hitters, though, from day one. I mean, that must have been a very exciting time, and it must have felt like you were just on a roller coaster from the very early stages.
It's one of those things that when you're in your early 20s and you're meeting people that are the senior VP of Apple that reports directly to Steve Jobs, and you're having breakfast meetings with him at the Lowry Hotel in Manchester, you haven't really got a clue what that really means. So that kind of naive lack of fear really kind of helps.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. So exciting times, on in the world of AI, and you've got SeaChange. Tell me what SeaChange does.
So SeaChange started out as an idea to have a platform that can, recognize any kind of scenario in the real world through sensors. And really it was inspired by the idea that there's a billion cameras out there, CCTV cameras, for example, that see everything but understand nothing. And because AI was, back in 2016, was starting to become a bit more, high profile and a bit more enabled, right? My thought really was, why can't we, I guess, make these cameras more intelligent, understand what they see? And so a little bit like today with ChatGPT has taken the large language models, the natural language side of things, to the level of understanding what you say, what you write. Let's do the same thing with other sensors and cameras. Vision, I guess, is one of the primary senses we have. So let's do that with vision.
So I was talking to somebody on an earlier podcast, and they were saying the big jump forward for AI for them was large language models, LLMs. Okay, what's going to be the equivalent for vision?
I think that my perspective is that actually vision had a bit of a jump back in, I'm going to say 2016, 2017, around then. There was a time where you could point your camera at an object, and Google had, this thing where it would tell you it was an apple or a cat or a dog, right? And I think there was a big jump at that point, and everyone got excited and thought, oh my God, the machines are going to take over the world because they can understand. And I think that computer vision has quietly, evolved bit by bit, but has never had that really big high profile thing that ChatGPT had, because that's had a whole bunch of theater around it that's been, pushed by Silicon Valley. But I would say the computer vision is progressing, just as much in leaps and bounds as generative AI is.
So how are you using this particular technology?
The thing that we're doing that I believe is different from most people is that we are breaking down the scenes or the scenarios into building blocks. So instead of training for, a monolithic scenario, we're breaking it down into a hand, a shelf, a product, a child, and we're putting those objects together and connecting them. And then we're assigning, attributes and capabilities. So if you're looking at a person, you could, identify them as a unique person. You can create relationships. So you can say this object, which is a child, is related to this object, which is a mother. Okay. And so that allows you to do really complex scenarios. Like if they go to the self-checkout and the mother forgets her handbag on the self-checkout and starts walking away, the self-checkout that is enabled with this technology could literally call out to her and say, hold on, you've forgotten your bag. Come back.
So it's made the connection between the woman and her handbag. It's seen them in advance and knows those two things should be together.
Right.
And knows that she should be taking it with her as well.
And that's the beauty of breaking things down into objects. This is the object-oriented paradigm that computer scientists know very well. It's basically applying that to computer vision. And therefore, you're taking something that is otherwise incredibly complex, breaking it down into little building blocks, into Lego blocks. Mm-hmm. And because you've broken it down into small little blocks, you can then, do the kinds of things I'm talking about. Because you can also assign hierarchies. You can assign identity. You can do things like you're approaching your car, the car knows that it is you, the owner, and is allowing you to get into the driving seat and drive off. It recognizes your son, who isn't allowed to drive. They're allowed to get in the back. They're not allowed to get in the driving seat. Okay. You can have complex situations like that. You can even recognize your mechanic, for example. So they're allowed to do certain things and not other things. So you can apply identity and authorization as well, right? That's the beauty of, the object-based, scenario recognition, which is kind of what we're doing.
So I'm really glad that you said it was object-orientated, because I was going to say, it reminds me of my days programming Java a very long time ago. And, that whole concept of object-orientated, and you have the different classes, and, the idea of you have a tree class, but then you've got, yes, that's a tree, but this tree has thick branches when you extend the class, etc. This sort of stuff, or this one has green leaves, or has leaves all year round, or pine needles, this sort of stuff. So that I found very interesting when I was doing that. And like I say, that's a very long time ago now. But I'm intrigued as to how that works with a broad spectrum of different entities, because when you're doing something in a development world, you've pretty much got it all mapped out. It's all documented. But when you're doing it from the point of view of, visual objects, there's such variation and so many different things. How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, that's a really great point. Okay, because now we're getting into the realities of this. Okay, mm-hmm. It's one thing developing something like in the lab, right? And it's a whole other thing bringing it out into the real world. And I'll give you an example. One of the first things we targeted was detecting liquid spills on floors. Okay. So we could, you're in a supermarket, the CCTV sees a liquid spill, it notifies, it gets mopped up, no one sues anybody, no one has an accident, it's all good. And what we discovered was, feed, a few 100,000 images of liquid spills from supermarkets, you're going to develop a model and it's going to be pretty good, right? Yeah. In the lab. Then you get it out into the actual real world, and guess what? There's false positives left, right, and center, right? Why? Because if there's a stain on the floor, it looks like a spill. If there's a sticker on the floor, it looks like a spill. When people are walking with shiny shoes and it's a reflective floor, there's transient liquid spills. Every time they walk, there's a flash, and that looks like. So you create the technology. It's great. It works fine in the lab. You bring it out into the real world, and then you spend 100 times more effort removing all the false positives. Okay, and the thing that we learned was that not only is there a lot of effort to remove the false positives, you also need to have a feedback loop in order to, I guess, evolve and adapt and learn, in the field, because it's the real world. It's messy and chaotic, and unpredictable things happen, and things also change. And, one supermarket, take supermarkets, for example, one supermarket will look, different to another. Or if you're outside in a train station, liquid spills will be, different in that situation. So I think, my point is, the problem of removing false positives, having, a learning system that has a feedback that can sort of learns. I think those are critical things in order to be able to manage the very different kinds of models and scenarios that you're going to find.
But putting it into a more controlled environment, potentially a supermarket or a retail environment of some description, would probably help, I'm assuming, which is why we've got the topic today, the AI advantage for retailers.
Correct. Exactly. So while we could have taken our generic platform and applied it to anything, any market, any kind of business, right? What we identified was that in retail, there's a small number of very high value use cases, like you say, in a controlled environment that are targetable, that we can, attack.
You just don't need the people there to mess it up, basically. They're the lots of problems,
Yeah. Except, I don't know, you're joking, but except to balance that equation, the thing that we found is you've got to center this tech around people, otherwise it inevitably fails. And this is the difference, I think, with this kind of technology, which I think is different to other types of technology. It enters into a complex process with people and other machines and other systems. And if it doesn't work seamlessly with those other people and those other processes, take a complex, supermarket process environment, then people just switch it off, right? So basing it around, and I know it's a real cliche, people talk about, oh, we're not replacing humans, we're helping humans, we're serving humans. Well, the truth is a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
And in our case, you've got to help the attendants, for example, because they're not going to go away. They're still going to be there. But if you can remove some of the aspects of their job that isn't that much fun, right? Confronting people that are stealing is no fun for anybody, right? Then, that is genuinely helping them in their job and also helping the retailer save money.
See, I'm old enough to remember the transition from tills where you had to know the price of everything, or, you'd be looking at the little stickers on the cans of food, to now, of course, use the barcodes and everything just gets beeped through. And, it's like the world was falling down when that was first mentioned. And it's just an evolution of that in so many ways, I see. So what are the kind of use cases that you find are most common, the ones that, that you say there's high value use cases? Where's the big wins here? Or the quick wins, should we say?
One high value use case for the customer, for the shopper, is you talk about taking the barcode and scanning it, it beeps, you put it in, you're done, for self-checkouts, right? Well, even for the staff checkouts. Imagine if you take an item that doesn't have a barcode, bakery item or a piece of fruit, and you literally scan it in exactly the same way as if it had a barcode. But this time the camera is just instantly recognizing what it is. It will beep. Oh yeah, it's a gala apple or it's an avocado, and then you just put it in your bag. That's it, right? Imagine that that's what you did. You're literally just scanning these items as if they had barcodes. And whether you're doing that as in self-checkout or if the staff are doing it, right? No one has to go through the lookup item. You never have to know if an avocado is a fruit or a vegetable ever again, right?
Well, now you've got wondering. I'll have to look that up later on. But anyway, keep going.
Spoiler alert, it's a fruit. So that's a good one for the customer. A good one for the retailer or for the attendant is, and also this helps the customer because a lot of the times customers accidentally misscan or accidentally, don't scan something. I mean, I've even been in a situation where I walked out of a store not having paid for something genuinely by accident. So the system will catch those cases. But here's the thing. Nobody wants to be accused of stealing, right? An attendant does not want to come up and accuse somebody of stealing. When a human accuses another human of something, bad things happen. You have a
confrontation time.
Correct. So what we've learned is that if you nudge the shopper, so if you put a nice message on the self-checkout screen that says, look, I don't think you scanned that last item properly. Can you have another go? 80% of the time, at least 80% of the time, they will, rescan it because most of the time it's an accident. And even if it wasn't an accident, they'll still, usually once they've been,
they know they're rumbled, they know they're caught.
Yeah. And because it's a machine prodding you instead of a human, it doesn't necessarily, you don't lose any pride over it. You just do it.
So that I can see so many benefits there. Yes, there is the obvious saving for the store, a reduction in theft. But there's also, as you say, there's going to be a reduction in confrontation. So if bad things did happen, well, it's going to cut those down, and they always lead to some financial outlay somewhere in the mix. So this has to be good news.
And not only that, but we know that there's an increase of violence and verbal abuse and kind of, let's call it out of bounds behavior in retail stores. And so the system is also hooked into the CCTV. It's a connected solution. So it's in the CCTV, it's in the checkouts, and it's seeing, when people are, here's an example. People will take stuff, put it in a basket, then they'll dump the basket sort of by the door. They'll walk off. An accomplice will come in and take it and walk off with it. They'll put Jack Daniels apparently is one of the most stolen items in the UK. Okay. So I hear. They'll put that in their backpack. Then they'll carry on shopping with their basket. They'll go to the self-checkout. They'll check everything out, but they won't check out the Jack Daniels and they'll walk out. Mm-hmm. With our system, it knows that you've taken a high-value item, the Jack Daniels. It knows that you put it in your backpack. When you go to the self-checkout, if at the end, when you go to pay, you haven't pulled it out to pay for it, it will prod you on the screen and say, look, can you also check out the Jack Daniels you've got in your backpack?
Because it might be a heavy item and they were just happening to carry it in their backpack for safety.
And that honestly does happen sometimes, right? And I do that sometimes as well, where I've just put something in a pocket or whatever, and I'm going to put it out later. And I'll do that, and that's genuine. And people do that. And so that's valid. And that's why you've always got to assume people are innocent, until
proven guilty.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a genuine mistake. Even when you catch them, it's a genuine mistake. And so, and sometimes, Richard, right, and this is the sort of the social side of it, sometimes people are genuinely destitute, right? And they are sort of stealing because they are desperate. And so one of the other things, and this is my social sort of comment here, right, is it would be nice if when people are caught, the first thing is to try and help them, to ask them if they need,
are you okay?
Yeah, put in touch with charities maybe, or see if they're okay, instead of just being really aggressive from the beginning, because you don't know what's going on with people, right? And it's like I'm saying, let's put people first. Yes, there are bad people that are genuinely actively doing bad things, but there's actually also other people that kind of need help, right? So let's balance the equation a bit.
I love that approach as well. So can the same system look at, the produce aisles and maybe say, hey, well, we need to restock that particular aisle, but also maybe even looking at fruit, be it an avocado or some other fruit. This seems to have an avocado theme today. But also say, okay, I can see that looks like it might be past its shelf life, even though in theory, it's supposed to be good for another couple of days.
You absolutely can. And this comes to kind of another point we should make, right? When you have a platform like this, and this is no different to having a large language model platform either. You can do anything in the universe, right?
Yeah.
And it's very easy to have conversations with people where you're blue skying all over the place, and then nothing ever gets done, ever, right? Because you're just sitting there having all these amazing ideas and nothing actually.
I have certainly been there.
So what we're very keen to do is to focus in on the key use cases, deliver those, show value there to the customers and to the shoppers, everyone in all of the stakeholders, show them more value, and then we can build on that. Can the system detect when fruit is going off? Absolutely.
In theory, yes, of course it can.
Well, in theory and in practice, because people have done it, right?
Okay.
It's that's a done thing. People have done that. People are using spectral cameras to look at crops growing and if they've got disease, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on over there that you can incorporate, into this. Can you have shelf edge cameras combined with ceiling cameras to look at stock and understand when it's running low, or if the planograms are all over the place, and things are in the wrong places? Yes, you can do all of that stuff, right? Are those the primary use cases? They're probably not. Right?
No, not yet. Not until you've cracked the first ones.
Correct. Exactly.
That is really intriguing. I love the whole concept with the way that there is a social element as well. I'm a big fan of that side of approach because this show is very much about not trying to scare people with AI. And I think what you're going about there is very much along those lines. So tell me, would you also be adding in any other sensors to the system, sound or, smell or anything else like that? Because at the end of the day, it's just more data in. The AI probably doesn't care.
Correct. And we kind of already are, right? Because you've got the security scale, so the weight sensors.
Of course, yes.
Some checkouts, not all, right? And a lot of European ones, they're unstructured checkouts where it's utter pure chaos, right? There's no scales or anything. But the ones that have scales, yes, we do take input from the scales. We take input from when people touch the touch screen, so we understand, what they're, how they're interacting. All of those things are inputs that go in, right? Absolutely. And yes, absolutely, we can take in sound. We're not at the moment, right? Like I say, stay focused. The biggest killer of startups, need to stay focused. But it is just data. And in the very, very early days when we were in ARM and we had bigger budgets to play around with stuff, we were playing around with infrared cameras and all sorts of other sensors to detect things. So yes, absolutely.
That would make complete sense. So outside of traditional retail, where else can you see this style of technology being used?
When you're in the CCTV and you have a system that can understand the interaction of human beings and the interaction of human beings with objects and their location, their context, you can pretty much apply the same technology without that much change. Okay, a bit of retraining, a bit of tuning, of course, in many, many scenarios. Let me give you an example. We're partnered with a number of facilities management companies, okay? And one of the ones that we are exploring in its early stages is in prisons. And actually, it's targeting Australia and New Zealand prisons with this particular partner. And we're looking at being able to preempt before there is violence. So there's, in some of these prisons, there's a lot of violence between inmates and also inmates and guards. And there are a lot of cues that the humans can detect that they know something's about to go down. But they can't keep their eyes everywhere all the time, right? That's the problem. Whereas the system could be looking at everything all the time and understand, okay, something's about to go down over here. Let's send the notifications and nip it in the bud before it happens. Because some of these things are quite horrific. Some of these.
Yes, absolutely. So that is obviously taking in so many different things. I'm assuming body language comes into it, people being in places that they wouldn't be normally, all these sorts of bits of data. And as you say, it's about the training at the end of the day. So I'm assuming with, the right amount of work and going back to the kind of the meals in a pill and cars that fly stuff that we were talking about earlier on, you could pretty much train your system to handle any environment to look at things.
You genuinely could, and like I say, breaking it down into building blocks, you can end up developing incredibly complex systems. So that's exactly right. And in a prison environment, you can unleash the face recognition without anyone getting upset with you, right? And you can look up their profiles, and you can say this inmate must never cross paths with this inmate because bad things will happen. And you can take the environment into account and other input. It is 3 a.m. and this prisoner is out in the yard. No, that's not.
No, that's just wrong. Full stop.
Yeah. It's lunchtime and they're out in the yard. No, that's fine. Okay. So all that data, that context is all, it's vital, right? So it is a multifaceted, multi-sensor, multi-data, multi-modal, they call it, sort of system. Correct.
And to train these systems, I'm sure this is a how long is a piece of string question, but typically, how long does it take for you to go from the beginning to where you've got a model that you're reasonably comfortable with for the customer?
Yeah, it definitely is how long's a piece of string because, like with large language models, you're not going to usually start from scratch. You're going to start with a base model and you're going to modify it and work with it, right? So obviously, if you were creating a model from scratch, that takes a long time. But if you're modifying existing models, it can take anything from a few weeks to a few months. And when I say that, I'm talking about a productized model. I'm not talking about having it working in a lab, because you will develop it and then you will have to work on the false positives.
Yeah.
And that will just depend on how difficult the environment is. But I mean, it genuinely could be, a matter of a week or a matter of months, right?
So when we talk about, let's move back to the supermarkets for the sake of argument, retail environment, and you've listed probably just a small sample of the use cases within that environment. Yeah. I'm sure you can't go into figures, but how long would it be typically for a supermarket or a supermarket chain to see a return on that investment? A reduction in shoplifting, or, products replaced more quickly, less people hurting themselves because they've slipped on liquid. How quickly do you see that return?
I mean, depending on the capabilities that we've enabled for them, right? Is it shrink, and is it fresh produce recognition, and is it, the liabilities module, if it's all of those things, you can see return investment, within, say, 6 months.
That's really impressive.
And obviously all this stuff depends, right? Because if you're talking about a large supermarket chain where, it's an enterprise license that's scaling out to, 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 stores, then, the economics of scale sort of really kick in. Okay.
No.
And so obviously in that situation, you really are starting to see return on investment sort of quite quickly.
That sounds amazing. So if there's one piece of advice or one facet of information that you think people should take away from our conversation today, because you've listed a whole bunch of really intriguing things, but I really like the social element of what you're doing as well. Because if we talk about supermarkets, that one conversation between the shopper and maybe the person behind the checkout, that could be the only human interaction they have that day in some cases.
Yeah.
Well, what's that one piece of advice that you would want people to take away from our conversation today?
What I've learned doing this is that for me, the key is to be open and collaborative in terms of the business practice, right? Because this stuff is so big and so complicated, and the solution stack is so high. Mm-hmm. If you don't collaborate, and if you're not sort of open and have that kind of approach, you might win a few customers, but you're never really going to scale. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is you've got to base all this around humans. I know that sounds like a cliche and stuff, but the honest truth is the world is made up of humans. We are human beings, right? And if what we're doing isn't making things better for human beings, then what's the point? Okay. And so my view is, look, there's a lot of things we can do with technology, and we have a choice. We can choose to do something that actually adds value to humanity, or we can choose to do something that is very selfish and maybe generates lots of money for us, but individually, but doesn't actually help other people. My point is, let's make the first choice. That. So,
well, at the very least, the balance right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the balance right. And before sort of people think, oh, it all sounds a little bit sort of, unrealistic. What I would say is that it is imminently possible to balance the equation between being collaborative, doing the right thing, doing things for humanity, and also making money, doing the right thing for your business and your investors. There is a way to balance that. And I think that, recently big tech, well, not big tech, obviously, but big tech can sometimes get a bad name. And so it is complicated. I'm not saying it's a simple thing, but that I believe very strongly there is a way through. If you care enough about it, there's a way through to get the balance right.
I think that makes so much sense. And I couldn't leave today without referencing at least the Lowry Hotel you were talking about before. And I would love for the system to look at some of the old Lowry paintings with matchstick men and matchstick cats and dogs and see what it does. That would be a wonderful thing. Now, there's probably a bunch of listeners who haven't got a damn clue what I'm talking about at the moment, but I think you probably do. So that's all good.
Yeah.
Jason, that has been a really great conversation. I really wish we could keep it going because I feel that there's so many things I want to ask you, but we have to bring it to a close. So, Jason, where can people find you and where can they find the amazing stuff that you're working on?
So go to our website, SeaChange.com. So SEE change.com. and I'm on LinkedIn. So I've got a pretty unique name. So if you go to LinkedIn and look for Souloglou, you're gonna find me. I'll be there.
Fantastic. Well, as I say, Jason, really great to meet you. I've really enjoyed today, and I hope we do get a chance to talk again.
And I've really enjoyed it too, Richard. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, that's a wrap on another awesome guest episode for the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage show. Just before you go, if you like this episode, we would be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at aiadvantage.show right now. Until next time, I'm Richard Wray, and if you're an entrepreneur, get the AI advantage today.